Yep. So we are ready to roll. Pete, you can fill us in on what we're doing here today.
We are battling Odin in blind versus blind scenarios, both from the big blind and the small blind. In the limp pots, big blind ISO pots, and single raise pots from the small blind at various stack depths and from both positions. That's where we're at.
Part two.
And here, big blind versus small blind ISO. Wait, what does that mean? Should it start?
Oh, and again, guys, we are if you guys have any questions or if you don't want to hop on the mic, too, real quick, just we usually chat in the training sessions tab. So if there's anything you want to ask, I'll have my eye on that as well. What's going on, Cactus? All right, yeah, Pete, we can get going right now if you want.
Yeah, I'm just making sure I have the chat up too.
Okay, well, I'll keep an eye on it because you're going to be the one running Odin, so I'll make that my responsibility here.
Fair enough. So yeah, here small blind completed, big blind ISO'd for 4 big blinds, probably 3.5, and small blind called. I think this is probably kind of a mostly dark c-bet situation. These paired boards.
I guess it probably mixes here because I don't think this hand is like such a slam dunk bet that it's going to bet every time. But I mean, there's going to be very little difference in EV between bet small and check. So I think if I was going to bet here, it would be on the small side. But yeah, I guess it is mostly betting here still, so that's good.
Yep.
Interesting card here.
Seems like kind of a money card.
You bet here every single time?
I think we have a lot. How do I put this? It doesn't suck to get check raised enough that we can just bet. Yeah, I think we have 5 high, that we still put tons of pressure on. He's still gonna have tons of floats. But we probably just want to put a chunky one out there to put pressure on Jack 10, Queen, any high card hands, backdoors that brick, etc. It's set it up. So I think this 80% size is probably about what we want, so we can be geometric in our sizes on the turns in the river.
I think the best thing this hand has going here is that it kind of unblocks a lot of floats that small blind's going to have here, like the 8-6s, the 10-8s, 10-6s, Jack 10s, like you said. We don't block backdoor diamonds, which is good. So, and like you said, we do have 5 highs, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is very high frequency bet.
Yeah, I like the big bet too because it gives him less of an opportunity to check raise a small.
Mm-hmm. And then we also just have a very simple decision if we do get check raised too. So it's not like we're crying if we have to bet fold a spot like this. So
right, but it puts a lot of pressure on him to do it with air.
Agree.
Right. It's hard to find a min-raise bluff here or whatever.
Right.
It's gonna have to be for everything. So
I wonder if it
does.
But
it does mix here, which is interesting.
And it's probably because it doesn't have so much equity here, and also small blind can definitely still have a 9, and it's never folding a 7, it's never folding spades, it's probably not folding some ace highs here. So this is what I did like about it. Again, we unblock a lot of these auto folds he's not going to be able to continue with on the turn. And again, in general, I think I'm probably over betting in these spots a little bit more because people don't defend enough, so we can kind of get away with being a little extra aggressive here.
Correct.
Well, they're piling in now. What's going on, Ace? What's going on, Rhodesian? Shitster's in here. What's up, shit? Sir Shitster.
He's in there.
Yeah, we just got going here, guys. This is the first hand that we ended up doing there, so you guys are basically just in time. So, what happened here?
Let's see. I was looking at the chat. 15 big blinds. Big blind ISO'd versus small blind complete. I think we probably have a very heavy ace-x advantage here, plus we have the pair, but we're going to want to basically bet our full range, which probably means we just want to bet small, so I'd probably just put one big blind out when stacks are so shallow.
Yeah, it's funny, I don't know about you, and I don't know if we talked about this in the last session, but a lot of these offsuit connected hands, I'm not ISOing a whole lot. I think they're at least from what I've seen, they are pretty like heavy check back, and then when it gets like the 8-6s, the 7-5s, the 6-4s, those start ISOing a little bit more. I could be wrong there, so we'll check out the ISO range here after we play the hand. But yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be like a low frequency ISO, to be honest, because it has almost too much playability that when they limp shove on you, it's just you don't love it because it's like a good enough hand to like want to see what can happen.
Right.
In this situation.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me because this is not a place I'm ISOing.
Yeah. Okay, well.
So interesting that they use some big bet here too, which is, and I know we kind of talked about this too, Pete, when we first got Odin, that we saw a few spots where it was using like half pot C-bats on boards we would expect there to only be like third pot and less. So I'm just kind of curious.
Maybe it's because we have the ace-x advantage, we can leverage that to put pressure on more parts of his range so that like want to continue.
Also, a hand like this is probably going to need a little bit more protection than like a king 7, queen 7 because it doesn't have an overcard in case we do get called here. So, but we still see the king 7 using some big bet here as well. So this is pretty interesting. I mean, it is very low frequency. Yeah. So the fact that we're only using the 17%, we're using the other ones like 31 and 48. That would just probably standard default to just using like a third pot and under here.
Look at this response to the half pot.
It's kind of crazy. You guys finding this spot?
I never in my wildest dreams would have guessed this is a thing.
I bet a lot of people are like limp jamming these queen jack suited, king jack suited, king 9 suited, stuff like that too.
That too. This is frightening.
It's pretty wild. I mean, at least we can be happy that our opponents probably are not finding these spots. So,
right. I'm just trying to wrap my head around why.
Well, because it's, for one, it's still likely the best hand. It just auto folds junk, and then even when they fold like or float like a 7x or, I mean, they could even bet call like a, well, jeez, I don't know. So this versus a half pot too. Okay.
Right. That's why I'm trying to. I guess it's because like SPR is so shallow. Like you just have the best hand enough times, but you're not going to have like enough turns that you can like continue to call off with. So like it's better to just stick the money in now. That's my best guess, but that's pretty out there.
Yeah, so I guess between getting a lot of auto folds and there being so much money in there, and then also like if our opponent has, like if we just do this with king 10 and our opponent just snaps us with like an 8-7 or pocket 8s or something like that, at least we do have some equity. I mean, we're obviously dead versus an ace, which is why I'm kind of surprised that there's not a small sliver of fold with the like king X of hearts combos here. Because I figured that at least the ones that had backdoor suit potential, they would actually do that, but they're just doing it with every single combo. This is wild.
I have absolutely no insight to derive from my 10 years of professional poker on this.
Yeah, this is nuts.
Sorry guys, shut it down.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you next Friday.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't.
Maybe run this through Pio sometime and see if it agrees.
Yeah, I'll screenshot it.
Yeah, and again, like the best part about Odin is these spots in Pile usually take a long time to run because ranges are so wide. Now this one won't take so long because it's only 15 bigs effective. So the smaller the stack to pot ratio here, the faster the sim will run. So this one may actually run a little bit faster. Also, ranges might be a little less wide because a lot of the ISO range versus a limp is just going to be all in rather than just like an ISO steal. So this one might not take so much time to end up running, but I would essentially just run.
I'm posting in the chat to Steven.
Yeah, I was going to say I would essentially just run the smaller sizes here because the like half pot size is used so infrequently.
Yeah, nobody's doing that either.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in some ways this is like borderline irrelevant because let's see what happens when you do one big. It's probably just floating then, right?
I would imagine.
Yeah, no, it's still
gangster. So it's just like this is how valuable like King High is in this spot, and that's if your opponents are isolating wide enough at 15 big blinds, which I can guarantee you they are not. So
part of it's because you have no ace-x, or virtually no ace-x. You have this little sliver of suited stuff, but because you have no ace-x, like your King Highs actually become like near the top of your range, and I guess like if we're being theoretical about things, it's good to play the top of your range aggressively at times.
Right.
So I guess that would be the explanation.
Mm-hmm. And you notice how they're like check raising more 7-5, 7-4, 7-3 as opposed to like 8-7, 9-7, 10-7. And I think that's just protection
vulnerable
reasons.
to less.
Right.
Yeah.
And then obviously like the Queen 7 is just the strongest one, so that's going to raise high frequency as well.
And it's good to point out too that like in these shallow stacks situations that there's actually like still a lot of like variability in like what strategies can be. I think a lot of times when people get this shallow, they just sort of like think, oh, it's just like push fold, like there's not like a lot of room to finesse. But what this is showing is that like there actually is, and that it's actually probably like spots that most people are just completely whiffing on. So it does make it good to look at this, even though I mean this is exotic.
I feel like I've seen 2.5x's from like 2.5x ISOs on 10 big stacks. So that's kind of crazy too.
That's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
That's definitely a thing with like your 8 deuce offs and that sort of thing. But we'll continue. This is.
It's a little too early in the game for us to be this stumped.
Oh, and then now we know what the range is supposed to be. So
yeah,
I guess if he has a bunch of high that he's calling off, we just jam it in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any need to just call here. Like, SPR is just way too short. Wow, gangster. Wow, he race folded too. Holy shit. Like, I just figured with that price, he has to commit himself with just about anything, so. Wow, wild.
Odin rolled. Odin
All
right, moving on.
Odin cheated. I've been waiting for somebody to like look at my stream and see my random number generator and have somebody like question that as RTA.
Yeah. I'm leaving it to the gods. Check back this. No, this is a linked pot, blind versus blind. Check back. Check high probably has some showdown, and just otherwise there's not much working for us. What are we really trying to get to fold with one bet? Etc. Etc.
I think we're doing very little betting here. Maybe a little bit more with the jack spades, but this one does have showdown and playability.
Again, for the same reasons, not much has changed.
Whenever I see somebody check this spot twice here, I'm like, okay, they either have queen high or they have some sort of pair that they're just not betting. Like nobody's ever checking like pure ass here.
I was about to say the same thing too. That in reality, actually, humans probably bet more than the solver, which is like kind of rare. But I think we probably just continue to check.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have better hands of bluff than this one.
Yeah, and then we just lose to that, which is great.
Odin plays just like the dudes in the $22 tournaments. Come on.
Yeah. All right, 100 bigs deep. We're a little more linear with our isolating ranges. At the king 10, like 50 bigs deep, you're probably not isolating hands like this very often. You're probably just trying to see a flop. It's deep, where you can call it.
I don't know.
Or at least not.
I feel like versus a limp range, this hand's definitely strong enough to ISO, at least at some frequency. I don't think it would be pure, but I would definitely roll.
Yeah, no, this is somewhat interesting on the monotone flop.
I probably like check back here.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Hand doesn't need a ton of protection, and it really sucks to get check raised on this hand. So,
and that small blind probably has maybe a little bit of a suited card advantage.
I would probably agree there, because I think most of our suited ISOs are going to be like, you know, the strongest like Broadways, and then like some real trashy suited stuff. Then we usually just check everything back, like the queen 7 suited, the jack 7 suited, stuff like that.
Right.
And they're going to be doing like a lot of limp calling, mostly with suited stuff.
So I see. We have no choice but to call here. I would say I think that's pretty straightforward.
Yep, hands
we
not.
Beat his bluff. We beat his bluffs. Not good enough to raise.
There it is.
Etc.
Not strong enough to raise. Too strong to fold.
Easy. Uno option.
Well, this is an interesting card.
An interesting card. Like, these are probably value bets that maybe a lot of people miss. It's hard to say whether it's actually good to value bet here.
Yeah, I guess that's the main question here I was going to ask you is when ranges are this wide, we might get to value bet some straights here. It's just like what are our bluffs when we call turn and then a spade comes on the river? Like specifically
Nines,
nine,
like
yeah,
9-9 no spade.
specifically 9x no spade.
10-9 of hearts type hands.
Think you start turning a
That
10
makes
into a
sense.
bluff here?
I would turn 10-9 into a bluff for sure, for the very reason that it's hard to find where bluffs come from. Yeah, I'm sort of, I think I'd probably check more than bet, but I wouldn't be surprised if Odin wants to play more aggressively here.
Well, I would definitely turn some 4x into a bluff here. Tens might
That-
be indifferent. That's actually what I'm most curious about here. I would probably still try to find a value bet here just because nobody folds. And we also have like a super easy decision if we get check raise here. Like, no, does check. Okay.
Let's see where bluffs are coming from. And 9, it just checks back.
4x is basically pure bluffing. That's not an ace. Or 4-3, 4 deuce. I don't know why those hands are checking back, but all of the suited 4x's are bluffing.
King has straight.
So yeah, it's mostly 4x, and I mean, I guess the 10x is no, that's a lot of 10x there. So it's obviously more than just 10x with spades, right? So like, go to the 10-7.
Yeah. Jack 7, 10-7 seems to be another place. So some of our 10x, I guess I wasn't counting these as ISOs, but it makes sense that these get in there some of the time.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Interesting. Too thin to value bet. Okay.
But yeah, so I'm guessing no King X is value betting without a spade. Right.
But again,
that's good.
We maybe could value bet a little bit more thinly because nobody folds.
Yeah.
Oh, we got owned.
Just absolutely throttled in the blender. Ooh, another 15 big spot. A little ISO. See, this hand makes more sense.
We ISO'd?
We ISO'd as the big blind. 2.8x was the choice in Odin's world.
Right. What are you doing here?
I mean, I guess I'll hit 50% bet now that I see that it's an option.
You betting
with this
pure?
specific hand, hold it. With this, yeah. So I think we're shallow enough that we can call off, and like, it's not great, but we don't like, it's not a total disaster.
I mean,
so I'm probably like betting and like just like kind of shrugging, getting the money in, if it's gotta be that way.
So I don't think I would bet pure here. Like, obviously I agree. Like, this hand can always bet call, no problem. But then if we're just always betting with hands like this, when we check and the board kind of comes like, cards that are actually good for our hand, we just don't have those hands if we're just always betting them on the flop. Also, we can call literally just about any single turn if our opponent ends up betting on the turn after we go check. And also, this board probably isn't great for us. I mean, it being rainbow was kind of okay, but I don't think this board like smashes our overall range that much. So I'm probably working some checks here and some bets.
Oh, let's see what we'll play on the 10. There you go.
Boom.
And it never uses the big size in either. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's kind of that general theory when you have like enough equity where it sucks to get check raised. I mean, it's still not great to get check raised too because you're 9 high and basically no showdown.
I mean, yeah, we can also get it in like completely dominated, like Jack 9, 10, 9.
Now, I guess we can begin to block, or do we just continue to delay?
I'd probably mix again. I guess with a diamond, we can a little bit more. I mean, the deuce is, I guess we'll probably have more deuce X than the small blind from his limp calling range. We can also have like some slow plays, like aces and kings here too. So
we actually probably want to bet more than one big at this point. So I think that makes sense then too.
I'm kind of curious what the size is if we do bet here is on the turn.
It mixes between the 1 and the 3rd, which makes sense. Nothing too big, but I think at least in practice I would use the 3rd more, just to set things up a little more proportionally on the river, but probably doesn't matter too much.
I think we might go a little bit bigger with Broadway cards, because I think in general those should be better for the pre-flop raises range. So I think usually on the lower cards we end up betting a bit on the smaller side. I wouldn't have expected 9-6 to check this heavily, but I definitely would have worked some checks in.
And it's what, like 20% of the time, 15% of the time it's finding bets.
Yeah, that's kind of wild that it's checking that much. 6-5 is pure checking. Maybe that's because, like, yeah, it has enough equity to get it in, but it's not doing great versus a pair, and it can also get in versus, like it really sucks for it to get in versus 10-9, Jack-9, 10-9. Ace is not doing as much checking as I thought it would do. Seven X betting pretty aggressively here, which I suppose is fine. 8X is
because it needs protection. And sorry for being. I'm just trying to look at all this.
You want to elaborate?
All right. I was just trying to see if I noticed anything else. Nothing's like particularly standing out.
No,
the 5-6 is interesting.
Well, essentially, just take the note that with our our worst draws, I guess we just end up checking pretty high frequency because it's just kind of disastrous if we get it in. Like it's not doing well versus a 7 or an 8 that's going to stack off here every time, and then it's just the worst draw we're going to have too. So. And then it also throws some draws into our range here, so I definitely wouldn't check the 6-5 pure, but I wouldn't have expected it to be checking this high frequency. So that's just good to note in like the kind of patterns that Odin's using here, I think. So
right. Moving on.
So we're just playing from the big blind. Are we playing? Are we playing from the small blind?
Have we not played any small blind? I thought I had it both selected.
Okay.
But maybe it could just be random.
I was gonna
maybe
say
we're just playing from the big blind.
Okay.
And we can shift it to the button versus big blind too, like you said you wanted to do, because that'll be a little more. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see what everybody wants to do. If you guys just want to stick with blind versus blind, we can do that, or we can do like, 45 minutes of blind versus blind, and we can do 45 of button versus big blind.
And then this type of board, this was small blind raised. We call the queen jack suited. Draw heavy board. You tend to want to size up, but we're also shallow, so you don't have to size up too huge. So I'm thinking probably half pot is what's gonna be the answer here.
I don't think small bet's gonna be a very frequent answer here.
Right.
And also, like, the broadways here aren't great for us. They should be better for a big blind. So I'm guessing like we're pretty low frequency bet in general, and then when we do bet, we use bigger sizes.
And actually, probably the 2/3 is better because you're gonna want to have like turn shoves that line up with like your high equity hands, or at least some of your high equity hands. Semi bluff. So I think it's probably this the answer. And yeah, it actually does prefer the 50% the most, which was my gut. But as you can see, as is often the case, it doesn't really matter. And it even the bet 1/3 does get in there a third of the time, basically kind of the same amount as 50%.
I would kind of guess if we had like queen jack of hearts or clubs, then there's probably a little bit more less big bet or small bet that gets in there. I'm blocking flush draws and backdoor flush draws, and also just needing more overall protection.
That does seem to kind of be the case.
Go to the suited variety. We have queen jack suited, right?
Yeah. No, I'm just looking at both to see when you have less total equity, you want to protect more. And so with this backdoor diamond, actually, it seems to be the only one. Well, yeah, because it's the only one with backdoor equity.
Right.
So yeah, the less flush draw equity you have, the more you want to size up on these type of boards.
Also,
top
you know, for
pairs.
protection and unblocking your opponent's draws that are going to continue.
Right. We'll see if the same pattern holds true with your king queens. Well, they just have less total equity, so they need more protection. So what about like your queen nines? Probably queen nine without a spade would bet the third less, whereas queen nine wins about the same, so that pattern doesn't hold.
Can do no wrong.
But yeah, but the heuristic is still kind of the same though, that the less flush equity you have, the more you just want to start getting money in immediately, whereas with the backdoor diamonds, like you can slow things down a little bit in terms of your pace of getting the money into the pot.
Okay.
All right. Move on. Any insights on what?
Wow, just folded
So
here.
we will move to button versus big blind. Cool.
Yeah, so we'll do like another 20-25 minutes of this.
Sounds good. Let's see. Have we had a small blind spot?
No, so what? How
maybe
about?
Maybe it is all big blind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go after this one. I'll go back.
Okay.
Maybe
cool.
I selected it wrong. Hot sit after raising pre. Second pair, no backdoor flush, but also king.
Overcard to the
King over
jack.
6.
Yeah.
Probably never folding.
Like never folding to Odin, but if I see some random
Yeah.
in a $33 tournament do this, I'm like, shit. Like I can't fold here, but man, they just have it every time.
Yeah. And now same thing we were saying before. Well, not exact same thing we were saying before, but there's no reason to bet here.
Not strong enough to bet, not
Sure.
weak enough to bluff.
Indeed.
Wow, it does do a little. Maybe that's just a protection thing overall versus some.
Must be.
Yeah, maybe some like backdoor spades that are just gonna pure give up here that have equity versus a 6. Blech.
And I guess then you also avoid having to face this when you block, which is a reason to block. There is like you can take a defensive posture in order to prevent villain from bluffing you. Like that is a okay way to think, I believe. And that's one way to interpret those kind of the usefulness of those blocks in position on turns, is to not give them the option to bluff rivers.
Specifically, too, if you don't think your opponents are capable of like checking turns to check raise with draws or stronger hands too.
Yeah. So, I don't know. What do you think here, though? Once we see this, do we have a hand to bluff catch with?
Well, there's a couple things going on. I think we have the king of diamonds. We have the pure call here. It's good not unblocking like straight draws here for sure. I don't think this size gets used with the queen because I just don't know what worse hands are going to be calling. If we bet like king queen or queen 9 in the spot here, like we would essentially be bluffing his hero calls here, which are like worse queen x, and then it's going to be tough for some 6x and 5x to call on this specific card. So
the other question is, where are we at in our range? Because we're probably checking back some flush draws on the turn, so we definitely have some flushes. Probably checking back some jack x.
Say we're checking back a fair amount of jack x.
So we can have trips. So we're actually...
We can have some
we're
queen
not
x.
Yeah, we're not wanting for calls in the bet check bet line. So I think that might suggest that we could... I bet it's going to mix here. And in reality, against how most people play, probably fold. So I don't know where your head is at in that.
I don't know. Unblocking straight draws is pretty sweet, but not blocking flush draws kind of sucks. So I would probably just end up rolling here.
Yeah. Oh, perfect.
So pure folds. So I guess let's see if it's pure calling with diamonds. I would imagine.
It's rolling. It's actually like the suits seem pretty important in general.
So like
you want to unblock all backdoor flush draws as well. The club heart combo it likes. So having the spade isn't good because the having that would be a hand that he might bet check that.
So what's
Makes sense.
like our weakest calls here then?
This is the king of clubs, 6 of hearts. It's mixing a little 7-6. It's mixing.
So we don't have much queen X here, huh?
You have virtually no queen X. Well, it's interesting that it checks back the queen 6 when it gets 2 pair some of the time. That's like another part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're saying, unblocking backdoor suits is good.
So it's calling more like 6-3, 6 deuce, 6-4 than it is king 6.
Because you even 5-3 off.
So what can we
I
take
guess
from
it just-
this?
That it has to do with.
I would assume we call less of these hands because, like, by having 4x and 3x, we block cards that our opponent would likely have to bluff here. And with the king,
Yeah, and I guess when he's raising from the small blind, he's never really going to have like 3 and 4x hands off of. We started at 50 bigs, so it's actually good to like unblock just like the kind of a more linear range. It's going to have like the. You can look at what his pre-flop range is in a second.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'd actually like prefer to have cards that for our hero calls that don't interact with a check back line, which is just never going to really include like a lot of 3x, for instance. So that's probably what's going on there. I think that makes sense.
Sure. All right. Small blind?
I don't know. We're getting a lot of like kind of weird ones that are. I don't want to say I'm stumped, but it's. I guess that's why there's so much to learn in these blinds. So
there's a lot that can be learned here, and
Yes.
it's good for us. I mean, I know it seems like we're kind of like dilly-dallying on a few of these spots here, but I think the most important part is to really understand why Odin is doing what it's doing, like overall, rather than just in a specific spot. And that's why you see Pete and I kind of going back and forth here a little bit, just trying to figure out why, it would prefer to call with certain kickers over other ones here.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, we can move on here.
But I mean, it does show you though that, I mean, I heard someone the other day in some other video or something I was watching where they were trying to, they weren't correctly interpreting how like this like not blocking their bluffs like is important actually. That having these low cards is actually like can be good for your calling range.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the very reason why. And there's other examples where it's like better to call with like pocket fives on like a Jack 10x board, where like someone like it's better to call with like fives and like 10x on like certain like barrel runouts or whatever, because you don't block any of their bluffs, that sort of thing. And so this is sort of in the same ballpark of thinking. But maybe we can find some more specific examples of that at a later date. But we'll move on.
Small blind?
Oh, yeah, that's what we said we're going to do. Oops.
Like, we're having this much trouble in the big blind, like, things are going to get exponentially tougher in the small blind.
I didn't click this, so I guess we'll just do a pure small blind now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did mess up how I set it up. All right. Now we're in the small blind. We're raising at 100. The specific hand.
100 beavers.
It's surprising me a lot with like it's bet small in these types of boards actually. But without a spade, when it needs more protection, we think we've already learned that principle. That's actually going to favor the big bet more without the spade. And I know we've kind of gone back and forth, like when is the suit relevant in one direction to the other.
So I think that's more relevant when stacks are a bit shorter because it's easier for us to stack off. Now at 100 bigs, like we are here, I think we might actually do a little bit more small bet and check without the spade here, because I think we need hands that have a little bit more equity to be piling in so much money from out of position when we're this deep.
Right.
That's just how I would interpret being a little bit deeper here anyway.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So we'll stick with the small one.
Are you checking here ever though?
Probably not. I mean, I'm also again never. Oops, now I got this automatic thing checking it. Maybe a little bit, but again, also I'm probably never raising here pre-flop in reality. That I'm playing a pure complete here. But
let's assume you were raising pre.
Yeah.
Would you ever check this board here sometimes?
Yeah, I mean maybe a little bit, yeah, because it's still good to pot control on a dynamic board when you're 100 bigs deep out of position. You have a hand that's like under rep, so like you're gonna very easily be able to just like check all three on a lot of runouts, and they're gonna like put you on a capped range where like, I mean now I'm talking exploitative reasons, not GTO reasons, but yeah, when your opponent's gonna perceive you as having a capped range, they might be more likely to like put more pressure on than they even ought to if it's the right player type. So yeah, I actually probably think I would.
So in general, I think we want to be a little bit more cautious out of position with our bets because we're not really super excited to be bloating pots out of position when stacks are super deep because things can get pretty awkward here. So I think our betting frequencies would certainly be a bit lower in this specific situation if we're at 100 bigs as opposed to like 20 or 30 bigs. Because it's just easier to stack off and put in a bunch of money with shorter stacks, and things can get very complicated on numerous runouts here. Like literally any king, ace, 10, 9, spade drastically change the strength of our hand here. So I would definitely play a bit more passively, but it would throw in a little bit of bet here. So anyway, so we did bet. What are we doing on the turn?
Yes, on this turn now, I think it's probably your check. Maybe you can block some of the time because you still have enough equity, but because the board's changed, we have an easy check call. We don't want to continue to bloat the pot with a hand that's vulnerable.
Unblocking spades is good.
Yeah. Maybe that would be a reason to block again. We're probably kind of neutral and who has the more ace-x.
I mean, we should be limp raising some of our ace-x here too, so.
Yeah, and against the small bet, he's probably floating all ace-x with backdoor stuff. At least, and maybe even more.
It might just be all ace-x versus a small bet, honestly.
Right. So I think that probably leaves me too much check.
So blocking the straights is pretty good here. He shouldn't blocking a hand like ace-queen, which he should probably be pure 3-betting versus our open, is good. Unblocking spades, which he's going to call us with, is good. His bet size is gangster. It's also pretty good here too because I would assume that big blind's going to be low frequency bet here overall, just because this should be a better board for the pre-flop ranger's range. So when they do bet, they want to put a lot of money in here, I think, and really start like polarizing their range. So I wouldn't expect anything smaller than like 2/3 or 3/4 here from our opponent if he bets. But
this is 150.
Yeah, I also haven't seen opponents barreling this 1.5x size here yet.
Yeah, I think with our specific combo, we don't, since we blocked the nuts, we don't have a choice but to continue to call.
Yeah, I feel like this hand's too strong to fold.
Yeah. Well,
wow, just some bluff raise, sick.
This is interesting though. If you look at what you're winning, a call is worth only 0.19 big blind in a pot that has 37, or you know what, it's going to have 44 plus. It's going to be 60 bigs out there
against an opponent who is very capable of finding bluffs in this spot too. So you can imagine if you're playing against some random in a $10 tournament, we can probably just find a fold here, right?
Right. Because why are you trying to scrape out 0.2 big blinds in a pot that has like over 50 in it, in a spot that like most people probably aren't nailing? So I think what we can actually learn from this is that like in reality it should probably just almost always be a fold if you do ever somehow encounter this spot.
Yeah, but I also wouldn't have expected this always be winning 2/10 of a, or 2/5 of the big blind here. Or no, it's actually 1/5 of a big blind. Math, Kurt.
Yeah, 2/10. That's what you were thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that goes to show you that like you can just like when I know I've said this over and over and over again, but as you like study the stuff and you try to learn how to apply it in real life, just because it's the same call in real life, it probably actually means it should be basically a pure fold and all but the toughest of lineups, which, probably, to be honest, none of us are finding ourselves in. So.
Right. Knowing opponents' tendencies here is going to be pretty good in adapting Odin's strategy to the opponents we play every single day. So.
Rick.
So I guess the biggest thing is like, if he bets and we know how thin the call is on the turn, we probably just end up, wow, holy shit. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It is one of the worst hands it's going to have in this spot.
Right. And
it's
probably
planning on
all spades, all 4 or 5s and spades. It's probably continuing.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So you guys finding any opponents finding that bluff there?
I do think more people are finding the bluffs with these small pairs that have a suit on the board, but it's not like some
nobody studies everybody's too tight. I'm not giving anybody credit. Every time I mark somebody a good reg that I give credit to, I just see them make this nitty ass play or just don't find a bluff in a spot they should. And don't respect anybody.
That's how you win, guys. Never respect your opponents. All right, we limped. He checked back. Big blind probably has more 4x. Still have a hand that can check call with 2 overs straights and showdown with a king high. But I think I would check.
Yeah, I'm checking here mostly. No backdoor flush, showdown value.
And so it is in these spots where things are basically pure decisions.
Yeah, I guess, again, I'm always curious on these boards, like the low paired boards, how much bet we actually get with the majority of our range, because I don't think we're limping like a ton of 4x here, but like definitely a little bit more than the cash game charts that I studied, because I mean there's really not much of a limping strategy anyway. That's more of a raise first end strategy, I guess, but I've seen a little bit more betting from Odin in these spots on these low pair boards than I would have expected.
And now we still will just try to show down our king high. We can still use a check call. We're not really getting anything better to fold, and like maybe squeezing out some thin value from some queen high, but that's probably just doesn't make it worth it. So just block a little, protect your equity, I suppose. Which in reality, I'm trying to think through the GTO lens, but I know in practice when I know people probably or never really have traps here, and I do want to get this protection, I will do it against people who I don't think are going to like play super tough, and then when the pot moves on, which is great.
Yeah, I've actually noticed this a little bit. Blind versus blind is like protecting high card equity is somewhat relevant. I would have expected maybe a little bit more check when we block some like 8-5, 8-6 that he's going to float, but I guess that's why it's not doing it full frequency here. So yeah, that is a thing that I haven't really incorporated much myself. I've kind of picked up on the last couple days of studying here.
Yeah, no, so it's something that I know I've done like from a gut level, but actually I'm surprised to see the solver does. So that's actually useful, and again, it's probably just like mostly like a protection thing.
And now I think we just pure showdown or pure check.
Yep. Especially some check call. He's really giving it a think.
He bets. I'm assuming he's going to go pretty hefty here. Wow, kind of crazy. He shows down.
He went into the tank. That's weird.
Odin's like, God, this fish never folds here.
Let's see what he wants to bluff on these rivers and what sizes, and then we'll just keep going back.
These are honestly spots where I get kind of torn with, because for one, like I think that nobody's like checking like queen high, 10 high that much in these spots, and they're just like looking to snap call king and ace high. So I'm really not looking to bluff almost anything, kind of just giving up. So like you said, it's interesting like what we want to bluff with, because it's very rare we have a 7, it's rare we have a 4, so we have to be able to bet more than just jack X here. It is value betting some ace high. So I guess the real question is, why is it pure check 3
Why
deuce?
the 5 deuce? Yeah.
Right.
Maybe just because balance, but if it was balanced, then it would be mixing. Once again, I'm stumped. We're getting all sorts of weird outputs here.
Yeah, I always have trouble in these spots just trying to figure out what we should bluff with. I think I just kind of roll and make it like some random thing, but just always when some random opponent like checks out of position.
They just never fold.
Right, exactly. So it's like I think we can kind of get away with almost never bluffing this spot.
Mm-hmm. Even though it is finding pure bluffs from these kind of deuce X hands that get to the river like this.
So let's bet like 80% pot and see what small blind is defending with, like their worst hand they're defending.
For instance, the king 8 that we had, which we were prepared to call. Seems like Odin's acting slow now too. So I hope that doesn't mean that. So that river took a while and it took a while to load this. Alright, it's calling queen highs, pretty pure. But then no jack high. So yeah, it seems like queen high is our weakest call.
I would assume most opponents are not mixing calls and folds with king high though, as Odin is here. So in that regard, I think we're losing more money by bluffing what Odin's saying here.
Indeed. Alright. Then we wanted to see what the flop stab was too.
Flop c-bet, yeah.
From the small blind.
Or flop stab, yeah. I would assume low frequency with range. Pure.
Pretty much.
And I'm guessing, I mean, obviously we have some 4x here, like we have basically most suited 4x, but I guess big blind just has just about all of it when they check back here, so.
Right, which is kind of what we were saying. He probably has ISO, ISO some mix of like the 8-4 off type hands, but yeah, 6-4, 7-4, like those hands do ISO.
You ever check and flop in the big blind with 4x?
I know, again, once it's one of those things, just like the last spot I said, where like sometimes I want to because you're just like, it's going to be hard to get like a lot of value otherwise, but no, probably I just like always stab.
Yeah, how about you guys? Like when you're in the big blind here and small blind limps and you get this board and you have a 4 here, are you guys ever checking a 4? Like, I think I'm rolling for it, but it's kind of funny because I found spots where like it just wants a pure bet with trips and spots like this, and then you get like sims like this where it's definitely mixing with a lot of different 4x here. But I also think that's why it's kind of good to mix in some checks here, because I think just every single opponent you play against are like, oh, like if he had a 4 here, he would bet the flop. So that might in turn end up having them like bet or bluff a little bit more aggressively, because I think most people are just going to bet like their 7x and their 4x almost always here. So I think it's kind of good to be switching it up there, because it might be one of the few spots where you get your opponents to maybe over bluff into you, because they're just never thinking you're capable of checking back 7x and 4x.
Yeah, and it's the same thing we were saying before about having with the king queen and check-in, that having that from an exploitative standpoint, having what appears to be a capped range and then actually like having more at the top than like your opponent might perceive. It actually like you might be able to win more on 2 streets than you will on 3 if they're just always gonna like, because like if you bet this flop then you can only bet small, so then you're getting like less in on that bet, and then they might just fold turns. Whereas if you check back, they might get a little more sticky when you bet bigger on the turns, so then you're already getting more money in. It stuff there, etc. So like the EVs are actually probably like pretty dang similar when like they're just gonna like be folding a lot of turns anyway when you just go bet here. Right. Whereas when they might like be more incentivized to like get sticky and check call twice when you're gonna get to use a bigger size on turns and rivers anyway, because you tend to get to use bigger sizes on a lot of turns and rivers compared to the flop.
Or just jam over river bets anyway. So
yeah.
So that's interesting. All right, we'll do a few more of these, and then we'll move on to button versus big blind. I think we'll run it that from the big blind's perspective and the button's perspective. I think since essentially defending in the big blind, like nobody's winning money in that spot, so it's one of the tougher spots to play in poker. So I think it's going to be important for us to study that spot as well, at least semi regularly. Maybe we'll even continue next Friday with some more button versus big blind, and then maybe cover another one. But we'll see how it goes here anyway.
So here, we were small blind, we completed, big blind raised, we checked, he checks back.
Mm-hmm.
Now we turn to jack with all sorts of combo draws available. That we probably have the best hand, so we probably want to protect our equity.
So, What are you doing here then?
Like, I wonder if like you can even use the big size here, because again, like he's probably like never checking back king X, or very, very rarely.
I disagree with that. I think he's checking back some king X for sure.
If he ISOs like a king 5 or something.
Mm-hmm. And the board's super wet here too, and you're pretty deep stacked. So I definitely think some king X should be checked back. But that being said, I guess what are you doing with queen jack here once it goes check check?
Like, we probably want to bet for protection. Because we have the best hand probably the majority of the time. And I guess the question is, what size do we want to bet? We're gonna have lots of hands that are gonna want to bet on this board and gonna want to put pressure on his range.
Are you ever checking
here? We are probably gonna have two sizes. I don't think so, because I think we just have like the best hand like most of the time. Like I think it's just pure value.
Well, I do think that's true, but there's also like
and there's gonna be lots of rivers that are gonna change things, so then it's gonna be hard to get further value. So we probably just want to get the money in right away.
Okay, so I'm definitely not pure betting here by any means. It's specifically not just because of our hand strength and that our opponent can probably have some king X, but there's a lot of different draws that come up on this turn. So an opponent who's capable of like throwing in a raise versus a bet here, if we're betting too thin, like is going to put us in some pretty nasty spots here where we probably have to call one and then just fold most rivers. Yeah. So between that and then also like just, if we're just betting here every single time with a jack, that means if we check, we're not checking hands that are better than jack X here. That means the majority of our range is going to be what, like ace high,
definitely
8X, 4X.
I would definitely check weaker jacks, sort of, but
okay.
But I think it's just his hand and like how it interacts with his range. That like he's.
I don't know. In general, at least in my perspective, I'm checking a lot here. So, and maybe that's me giving my opponent too much credit for like playing a little too face up with their check back range, and it might be true what you're saying. Like maybe we can bet here a little bit more aggressively because people aren't either checking back enough king X or they're not raising wide enough with draws. So maybe betting here works a little bit more often, but I also think we get put in like really gross spots versus capable opponents, and also like we strengthen our check back range by checking this hand at least sometimes,
Yeah, you convinced me.
Okay.
The real question is, do we go for the check raise?
Well, we'll see.
Ooh.
Whoa! Didn't see that
actually
coming.
Doesn't check much. Neither did I. It seemed like it was just a pretty pure check spot.
So
instead it just
I wonder if it does this to for one, I guess if we have, let's say, I don't know, like 10-7 with the 10 of spades here, it probably wants to bluff for this size, and then also when we do have a hand like this, we put 8X and 4X and worse Jack X in a spot where they probably have to call for the price that they're getting, and also like if he has a hand like, let's say, Ace 3 of Hearts, I don't think he's gonna find a raise here, so we might even set a price for ourselves if we do end up betting here. Now the real question is, do we ever block here without the Queen of Spades? Probably not, but maybe. No, it's just pure betting basically. So Jack's just like super strong here. So what I'm actually really curious. I mean, we'll go back to see it on the flop here anyway once we work this spot out. So yeah, so you can see all the ace X just pure calling here, but it also has to call with just about all of its 4X, just about all of its 8X here, worse jacks. So we definitely get value from worse. But I guess like the flip side is maybe our opponents kind of might overbluff this card, but also it just kind of seems like when they check back twice, like most random opponents are just gonna have a lot of ace X here. but also for the fact that they're probably not raising thin enough. Like, I don't even know if some random opponent's finding a raise here with, the ace 9 or the ace 10 in the spot. They might just call, specifically without a spade. So blocking might work a little bit better here in game if your opponents aren't raising you wide enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like that ace, like a lot of people probably aren't like raising ace 10. Did you just say that?
Right,
but,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's our size here on the river? It's just pure small bet. Like this board overall is not great for us. But that being said, we probably get some bet. But when we do, since it's not very good for us, we can't put a ton of money in here. So I'm guessing it's mostly going to be small bet. Yeah, 33%. We really don't have a bigger bet size on this board than 33%. Not only because the board overall is bad for us, but when the spades fill in, I just don't think we do a lot of big betting from the out of position player. Now, what's really sweet is that I think a lot of people are probably just going to bet like really big here with their good hands. So I would assume that when we get to the river here with the flush, we're betting small here too, obviously. Which is kind of sweet because then we can induce our opponents to like bluff raise with maybe like some queen x of spades here. Even 5-4 with the 5 of spades is doing this. It's funny, like, I found that in a 3-bet pot I was studying yesterday in a cash game pot. So the 5-4 with the 5 of spades is basically like, it wants to take the worst pair you have that has a decent blocker to the nuts and essentially turn it into a bluff. And so it's kind of crazy to see 5-4 and 6-4 with the spade, just pure bluffing in this spot. Which also, I'm pretty sure our opponents are not finding. I don't know, maybe I'm a nit. Are you guys finding that spot? So...
If you like really think it through and you're like trying to figure out like where am I at my range, what do I check down, that like you can reason yourself to it, but
also blocking a hand like ace 4 is pretty sweet too.
Yeah.
So yeah, gangster.
All right, shall we move to the?
Do you guys want to do one more blind versus blind, or do we want to go button versus big blind?
Oh, well, I already.
It doesn't matter. There. Oh, sorry.
All right. I'm actually going to need too much coffee. Brief intermission.
Pizza
and then I'll get it set up. Yeah. 1 second. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know about you guys, but literally I was just studying a spot yesterday where it was in a 3-bet pot. I was going to say, maybe I can share my screen here. I'm not sure, but it was a similar spot to what we were just talking about with the 5-4, how we have essentially our worst pair with a flush blocker that it just wants to pure turn into a bluff. So it's kind of sweet to see Odin like finding those spots. At least we can start incorporating that in our own game and be pretty confident that most of our opponents are just not finding those spots. But yeah, these blind versus blind spots kind of make my brain bleed. I don't know about you guys. But definitely good practice. This is literally the best thing that Odin has to offer as well. Like I was talking about this at the beginning of the session too. It's the most important spot to study in tournament poker because it's the most difficult and ranges are so wide. It's always going to be tough to work these spots out. But also with a program like Odin, we can take 20 seconds and find a new hand where if we're running these sims through PO Solver where it's spending 15 to 30 minutes to wait for a sim to load on just one hand alone. And then we also need to hope that we're putting the right inputs in to get the proper outputs, which is also kind of a battle because the more inputs you put in, the longer it takes for a simulation to run. So this is literally one of the best features we can use with Odin, I think.
Indeed. Yeah, I've learned so much.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Set up for 50 and we just want to do just as the big blind facing the button?
Let's do 25 or 30 since those are more common.
Alrighty. But we want to look at play from the big blind to see what our defense frequencies look like on various boards.
Do in position and out of position as well.
Alrighty.
Single raise pot.
30 big blinds, button versus big blind. Let's go.
Show it.
We'll start on the button. Back to something kind of normal.
Right.
The board that we're betting pure.
I think I think these ace high boards in general, like because big blind really shouldn't have basically, let's say ace king through ace 7 off is probably mixing jams and even some ace 5 off. So like a lot of the offsuit ace X's are jamming here. A lot of the like suited ones, like let's say ace 8 suited and under, are probably calling here. So big blind definitely has some ace X here, just not really much of the strong ace X's. So we probably get to counter that by doing some pretty aggressive betting. We probably also get to mix small and big bet on with the 8 and the 8-7 being so connected and suited. So I would imagine we probably get a little small and a little big. But overall, I think we're betting this pretty aggressively. What do you think?
Yeah, and I'm trying to, yes, I would bet. I'm just trying to think whether we want to use big or small. I think with the specific combo.
Suits, I think, wants to use small, and without it, wants to go bigger.
Yeah, which again is the same thing we were saying with the King Queen a while back. So I think I agree.
See how accurate
but
that is.
We were
showered.
Oops, oh no, why does it always put this back on? Whatever.
Well, we'll check out the sim here anyway.
Yeah.
I would assume overall we're betting pretty aggressively here.
Let me just see what this is.
Wow.
Actually,
very aggressively.
A lot of lots of big betting. Because probably once it's 30 bigs, big blind's gonna have a lot of reshoves with a lot of his ace X. Reshoves are free but get it in, etc. And it's a lot of dark red.
I always think it's really interesting to see that when we use this much big bet, like essentially, like 65% of our range is using the big bet here, and we're still betting this pure. Usually when we throw a big bet
when ranges are this wide too. When our ranges
that's true. I was gonna say usually when we use big bet so aggressively, we're gonna end up countering that with checks because we're kind of polarizing our range when we use the bigger size. But it's kind of rare that we're using mostly the big size and we're betting pure. Now, maybe this is because of the stack to pot ratio here at 30 big blinds instead of being at like 50 plus. But this also speaks to our overall range advantage on this board as the in-position raiser as opposed to the big blinds calling range. They also never have like pocket 8s and pocket 7s, so they literally lack every single set in this spot.
So like when you compare like the top pair, we have like almost 3 times as much top pair versus big blind. We have, and like even compared to second pair, and he's going to have like obviously it's not going to have any 9s to kings or any of that, so.
Nothing half the time.
So we just have such a massive range advantage. We just get to slam it and put pressure on everything immediately.
Yeah, I would not have expected this much. That big bet would be the most like frequent option by this much.
It's counterintuitive though with like these 7x combos. Like why would you want to do that right away? And I guess it's just because that's how our range wants to play based on how the two ranges fit together.
No, I mean it's kind of fine here too because I guess you do turn some sneaky like 7x and then also you kind of make them fold around like if you just bet here small, they're going to be able to defend a little bit wider with some weaker draws here, and sometimes it's just not only sweet when you have when you bet big here and you can turn some 7x or you have 2 pair equity, it's a bit sneaky, but also you with a hand that's pretty vulnerable or like a pair like a 7 here, you kind of make sure that they end up folding draws that they'll be able to check call to the smaller size, but maybe not to the bigger size.
Yeah. Once again, we thought things
but yeah, interesting for sure.
By playing spots that we're more familiar with, and then nope, just instantly surprised. It goes to show you how the way ranges intersect though, are mostly what actually determines your strategy and not your specific hand.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think if that board was rainbow, we'd probably see a little bit more small bet being introduced.
Of course. I think this is pretty straightforward. We can move on.
Yep. Now here, I think we're just going to see a lot more small bet overall.
Indeed, and what I've kind of noticed in terms of deciding between one big blind and then the 1/3 option, it sort of has to do with the amount of kind of draw potential. So either on a flush draw board or these kind of connected boards, kind of choose a third more than you do the one big blind. You're trying to like figure out which to choose.
I mean, it's really whatever. I just quarter pot. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Or you split the difference.
Yeah.
In reality.
Yeah.
Which is also a fair way to approach it.
It's essentially the same thing.
Mm-hmm. What calls?
Oh, it's an interesting card.
Checks most of the time.
I think it checks here mostly? Or what are you doing here, I guess?
I think it check. I mean, I guess when you get raised, it's like normally just going to be an easy fold, but like you have a hand that can like pretty much always call.
I'm actually curious what the bluff raises
blinds
are.
Big blind's going to have a Jack X advantage because he's going to have offsuit ones that you're not going to be raising. But are probably also always going to float and then small, or at least float a lot of the time when they're not raising. So I think you probably just always want to, and this is just the type of board that you just.
Well, before you hit check, I think we actually bet here a relative amount, like specifically with our stronger two pair combos, like this one. I think it's going to bet more high frequency because big blind's still going to have like all king X, maybe some 10-9, some queen 10, some queen 9. Stuff like that. They probably don't have king queen. They don't have ace jack. So I would not say this would be pure. I think we probably get some bet. I'm just kind of curious on the size that we use. I don't know if this is a spot where we get some third pot here on a turn card when the board is this wet. Probably not, because we're essentially like I think the bottom line is I think we have to be able to bet more than like a straight here for value. Otherwise, like we're just gonna have too many bluffs and not enough value hands. So I actually think this might get bet relatively aggressively if I had to guess.
At what size?
Probably 2/3. So no small bet. So it's indifferent, yeah.
But it doesn't. It isn't. That was a good breakdown though about why you only want the bigger size. I like that. And then with the intention of always shutting it down.
Mm-hmm. Or you just know you're getting there.
Yes. Steffo, if you could mute your mic, please, that would be fantastic. Getting some feedback up, and then we got the gin.
Here, I'll get it. Hold on just a second.
Full house. Yeah.
Steffo, I'm going to mute you just for a second, but if you want me to unmute you, just hit me up in the trading sessions. I'll unmute you. He could be away, so. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have a full house, so now we put all the money in. I think everyone knows to do this. And all right, that's why we bet turns.
I actually would have thought that big blind might get a little bit of fold with some king X combos on the turn. Obviously, if they're calling queen 7, that's not true.
They're muted.
So king jack, even doing some checking here, kind of makes sense because we do block some. I mean, you know, I guess part of their calling range here is going to be king X here, so it makes sense why there's a little bit of check.
Mm-hmm. So we bet the third, and then we wanted to see what the defending range was, how much slow playing there is, how wide it is. We want two pairs, and he called what the queen 7, which against the next doesn't make sense, but.
So
he actually doesn't. So most of his like weakest jack X is actually check raise and flop. So that's what I was one thing I wanted to see.
I was gonna say, so the bluffs probably have to be ace high oriented because I just don't see. I can't imagine like just bare 8x raising here. I don't think that would make a lot of sense. So the few bluff raises we have are some suited ace X here because that's essentially like the only semi bluffs we can have in this spot.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious where our bluffing range comes from because obviously we want to raise some jack X.
King 2, I guess is a bluff. Hey.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Then we want see what his calling range is on the river once this comes in. Which one was it? It doesn't matter which one it is, but
I'm kind of curious.
yeah. See where he finds his heroes from, if it's always a straight at worst, or...
Yeah, it's easy to know that we're going to value that river with full house, but I think it's also relative to know what we're supposed to be defending on a board like this. Paired board on a 4-card straight board.
So some of it's King X, it's folding. It's Jack X, of course.
But Queen 10's pure calling. So it's folding some trips, but calling some 2-pair.
The block boats.
Mm-hmm. But, I mean,
Important.
King X blocks boats too, right?
Sure, but having, like, the queen and the 9 then blocks both queens and 9s.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas King X is something, I mean, probably sort of a wash when you break it down, but... Interesting.
Yeah. Still, like, I don't know you guys, but are you calling down, like, every single king here? Are you calling down pure with Queen 10, 10, 9? Like, I don't know. It's kind of hard. Like, if you don't have a straight here, like, what are you calling with, essentially?
I think I probably do, in reality, when, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think, like, I do think I might sometimes find myself more with these Queen 10. I think I might sort of do what it's saying, but I don't know if that's just, if I'm just seeing this and thinking that. And I do not get the difference between King 6 and these weaker ones, but maybe that's just, doesn't matter too much. Why are these pure folds? And this is basically a pure call.
Maybe someone with straight draw blockers? I don't know if they're bluffing with, like, 6-7s, 8-7s, 8-6s.
Yeah. That's about the only thing it could be. Yeah.
I can't imagine anything else, so that's what it has to be. Like, you block their bluffing range. But would that be reason to fold?
Always calling out, Queen 10's always calling. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Either way, we won't rack our brain with this too much longer.
Yeah, I'm slipping here. All right, get a few more in here. Like kind of clear, but third. Sure, a little bit of big size gets used on this board, but it's not dynamic enough. We have the spade anyway, so check raise is slightly less of a threat. We have kings anyway, so it's not much of a threat.
Yeah, I think big bet probably gets in here a little bit more. Maybe not so much with the 3 specifically. Wow, it's just pure big bet, huh?
Yeah,
I was gonna say even if the 3 is like a 5 of diamonds, I would imagine there would be a little bit. Well, let's finish that hand first before we go through it. But yeah, I would say even if the 3 of diamonds was changed to the 5 of diamonds, I would completely understand more big bet because it's just more, straight draws out there and more like bad turn cards in general. So I would think with the 10-8-3, maybe we get a little bit more small bet, but no.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like me 3 months ago, probably 6 months ago, probably would have like always bet big on this, and then I've actually like recalibrated back to thinking, oh no, this actually isn't wet enough to just like hammer it in, but apparently it is. And now we want to get the money in, so we gotta choose a bigger size. So probably this 2/3, maybe even the 90 gets in there, 927, then it would be either way. I think it's a clear big bet situation with our specific combo.
Yeah, so if we're deeper here, I think we probably get to work some check-in, but they're still going to stack off with worse hands. This hand needs a ton of protection, so I'm pretty sure we're going to be pure bet at 30 bigs. No, it does check a little bit. Definitely would have expected more check had we been deeper stacked here. Now, yeah, just going to pile it in.
The main thing we wanted to see was the flop play. Oh, you did call it the Queen 8. But yeah, we just see how our flop range is. It was all big bet again, but a lot more checking than the last time we saw it. There was lots of big betting guy there. Seems like King specifically, it's a hand that just wants to kings through jacks is our hands specifically going to slam money in.
Mm-hmm.
Aces doesn't need as much protection, so we can bet smaller, especially with the spade, which we were indicating that we thought smaller sizes favored more with a spade.
Mm-hmm.
So we can at least see that that's true.
Yeah, I would have expected to see.
Yeah.
I mean, if we do have a checking range here, I would have expected like a little bit of aces to end up checking here. But at these smaller stack to pot ratio spots, I think they just kind of pure get it in there, I guess. Sure. So either way, I'm still betting this board like pretty aggressively. There's only a 25% check here. I'm still gonna kind of close my eyes and just bet everything.
Yeah, some of it's somewhat surprising from some of our 10x and to protect our check back range. I'm surprised you actually check back that strong when a board as dynamic as this, as shallow as we are.
Well, you just said it right there. Because it can still bet 2 streets and get all the money in. So
True, and can at least some rounds call relatively comfortably.
Right.
All right, was there something else we want to see from this, or shall we just continue to plow ahead?
Sure, keep it going.
Oh. Plow. Mr. Plow.
They keep giving us all these good hands.
Yeah.
I mean, this is relatively easy. I think we just bet small very aggressively here.
Yep. For once, and even the super small, the one big blind gets in there.
I'm surprised
Dry
it's a
enough.
super dry board.
Back to the flush draw. Gonna have a lot of hands that can barrel big. Our hand's good enough to want to get the money in, so we're gonna bet the size that lets us get the money in on the river.
It's pure.
I think
I'm
this
pretty
is
sure.
relatively straightforward, and it even goes bigger, which makes sense. But fair enough.
I didn't think these overbets got in there when stack to pot ratio was so small. Like if we were deeper stacked, I think it would make a whole lot more sense. But I guess like we
And then
are
the
finding
question
a
is,
little bit.
do we have some overbet calls with like our combo draws that want to play that way? Which I'm gonna say yes, and part of that actually has to do with seeing a guy who's a very good reg in the main event this past fall on the World Series do that exact thing, and I never actually looked that hand up. I wonder if I still have it jotted down somewhere because I don't remember the details, but I remember he like overbet called off for like half his stack with some, big combo draw with like low cards.
Yeah, he's essentially where if he just bets like a normal 2/3 size, he's not going to have enough equity to continue.
Right. So I'm actually curious about this. What hands we are finding to use that big size on this turn with, and if we're going to have some kind of combo draws that can call off, which, well, this is very aggressive.
Random 7-5-0. You guys finding these spots?
You're 7-5 suited, but yeah.
Oh, it's 7-5 suited, yeah.
Very aggressive. Very, wow.
Yeah, I'm not finding those spots. Not gonna lie.
We are finding all sorts of spots we're not finding today. This has been the finding day.
I mean, I guess overall this board is just so good that we're just hammering it in there. I just figure if we're betting that aggressively on the flop, we're just gonna have so much trash on the turn that we likely just have to give up with. But there's like a lot of no equity hands that we're just double barreling for a really big size here.
I was actually not doing a lot of the bet calling off sort of thing that I thought was going on. Although, I mean, I assume when you're betting this big with like the 5-7 of diamonds, like you have to call off then if you bet 9 bigs.
I don't. If you bet 9
Maybe
bigs,
not though.
I don't think so. I mean, so he jams. I don't even want to see it. Let's just see if we can do some math here. So it is folding. I was gonna say, so we have to call another. Oh, math. So 19, 20. What was that? 26. Yeah. So we got to call another 17 to win. 62. Yeah, so we need like 30% equity, and we essentially have what nine outs times 2. That's 18. So we only have like 20% equity. So it'd definitely be a fold.
Or are we? And then we're never using the overbet sizing when we have flush draws. Is that what's? Yeah, that's what's going on here. We're never using the overbet sizing when we have flush draws, except for a sliver of this one particular variety.
Mm-hmm.
So we never really are like taking these like big equity hands and just trying to like give ourselves a price if the rest of the money goes in, but otherwise just trying to leverage pressure.
Yeah, I was gonna say I figured it would be the opposite, so we don't get in the spot where we double barrel a flush draw and we have to bet fold it. So, but it's probably checking a fair amount of flush draws on the turn as well.
Yeah, you can see that. It's
So it kind of likes betting the ones that don't really have any kind of like straight equity or high card equity, and kind of like quote unquote turning those into bluffs, and then checking back with the stronger ones, and like the ones that have like the 4 5s, the 4 6s, 5 6s. And for what it's worth, I think people are just like overdo it with flush draws as well. So when they check here, they just don't have these flush draws in their range.
Because it seems natural.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, and I guess like these are the types of boards you're not going to face a lot of check raises too. Because when we do bet this big, how much is he actually?
Yeah, this is like one of the few spots that population overbets in these situations. Like they bet too much when solvers are finding more checks. You don't find that very much when it comes to population tendencies versus what Odin wants to do here and things like pile solvers. So, okay. On to the next one.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm gonna unmute Steffo here and see if he's back.
We're getting kind of crushed today. I think we normally do that. Check.
What are you doing here?
No, I feel like we get to block because I don't know. Why do I think we get to block?
That's the question.
It's basically the same as that Queen Jack hand. And it's sort of like how I imagine population to play versus how Odin might play. So against Odin, you want to check more, but against population, you want to bet more because people are going to be much more captive. Oh,
no, yeah. I think you're right. Keep going.
They're going to be less aggressive. Population's going to be less aggressive versus blocks. But they're just going to play more passive, straightforward strategy. Whereas the solver might be a little more aggressive versus your small bets and then put you in a world of hurt. So it's probably better to check against Odin than population, but it probably still mixes here even in GTO land.
So, yeah. So what
you're gonna have offsuit. You're gonna have all the offsuit combos that like are 2-pair. Or you're not gonna have all the offsuit 2 pairs. But you're gonna have 5-4 off, 10-8 off, 6-7 off. That the button's not gonna have. So.
Okay. Yeah.
So you probably get to bet a fair amount here.
So that is a point. I do think this board is better for the big blinds range than it is for the buttons range. Therefore we can probably do a fair amount of betting here. Also, in terms of what you were saying about the population, I don't think the population's finding enough checks with like the 8-7s, the 6-4 suiteds here, even like some 10-7 suiteds that probably get checked back a little bit here. They're probably just pure betting with 7-6 suited, so they don't wind up with straights here as much as Odin might. So they probably are checking more just like pure give ups or like ace highs and king highs if they don't want to see bet here, and not enough with like flush draws, straight draws, and pairs here. So I do agree that Odin's range will be stronger when they check back here than an average opponent. So if we are playing against, the population, we can probably just like blindly close our eyes and block bet here on a board that's good for us when our opponents are not checking hands strong enough. So, but in terms of what you were saying about Odin, yeah, I think they're going to be stronger here. But that being said, I still think we get some check and bet here, check and block.
And those thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And no, nothing to do but call.
Mm-hmm.
They seem pretty obvious.
What's so obvious to you, Pete, may not be so obvious to the rest of us. Don't assume we're all as good as you.
Yeah, 2 big blinds, second pair. Haven't put any money in yet. We're near the top of our range. I think most of us have big enough brains. And check, although it's kind of I wonder if there's any leading here with the entirety of our range.
I was thinking the same myself.
And then whether a hand like this I would even make it in there. I don't think it would really make sense with this particular combo, but
no, me either.
I think there probably are some leads on this.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
But
We can check that out.
It's an interesting delay. Probably sort of the thing you were saying, that there's value in protecting equity.
But specifically, I'm blocking both flush draws here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what's happening here, obviously. Now, I guess we can check out the spot first, see if we have any lead. And we do, 21%. That's something.
It's going to mostly come from 5X and...
Missed diamond draws, if I had to guess, so click on the diamonds.
Yeah. Yeah, and not from actual flushes, I'm sure there are some there too.
Yeah, so unpaired diamonds that are... Yeah, essentially it's just unpaired diamonds, huh?
Unpaired diamonds, and we'll see what actual flushes are.
That aren't ace high, I guess. I'm just thinking in terms of our bluffs. Like, it's easy to find the 5X and the spades that we're going to be leading here.
Yeah, but not every flush is going to want to do it too, right?
I would assume most flushes, like 8X flushes, probably don't lead here because you block value that your opponent might hero you down with. And also probably not ace high flushes because our opponent will likely check back with ace high hands, and when we hold an ace ourselves, it's more likely that they're going to have a hand they're either going to bluff or value bet. So I would assume ace high flushes probably don't do a lot of leading here, and like 8X flushes probably don't. No inner monologue, Pete. Let us know what you're thinking.
Not thinking much.
Shocker.
Yeah. Sorry.
But all right, so go
There's
to
anything else on other streets we want to look at?
Yeah, I want to see before we go to the flop, just check out our turn probe. Right there. Yep. No. Yep. I think we get mostly block. I'm just wondering if we get any big sizes here. I would assume we do. Yeah. And that goes back to this board being better for us and our opponent being somewhat capped when they check back. So we're going to do a lot of block with like a lot of 4X, 5X, 8X, and maybe some like super strong hands, and then like weaker draws.
We have more big bets than we have block.
Mm-hmm.
We have 22% over bet, and then that's basically pot. So like a quarter of the time we're betting, and then yeah, it's actually, but yeah, it's for the reason we were saying that there's a combination of hands that want protection like 9, but then we have such a big range advantage that we can slam a lot of hands in here too.
I also think so. It's important for us to note why there's so much overbet going on here. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Probably puts pressure on like a lot of the backdoor flush draws, and then like the ace highs, he's going to check, the button's going to check back, those sorts of hands.
Yeah, that and our opponent being relatively capped when they check back.
Yeah.
So that's going to allow us to overbet, and also this board overall being better for our range than it is for the buttons range. I think we're going to get overbet for those reasons. So essentially, with our opponent capping himself and the board being better for our range than it is for the buttons range, that's why we're allowed to bet big here to put pressure on a weaker range with both our value hands to maximize our value and then our bluffs to get him off like weaker hands. He's going to be checking back because if we just always bet small in these spots, then we're not making enough money and getting enough protection when we bet smaller, and it makes it easier for him to continue when we have bluffs when we're just pure betting small. So when people go out of their way to, or not go out of their way, but when people check back hands that most people are never checking like ace 10, king 10 plus here. Probably not pocket 8s, pocket 4s. So essentially, they're not going to have the really strong parts of their range. So we, in turn, get to put a lot of pressure on them once they end up checking back and all those strong hands are out of their range. And then at the same time, this board is just a lot better for us than it is for them. And that's the main reason we get some overbet here. Of course, we're not going to just do like pure overbet. We're going to throw in some smaller bets with our 4X, our 5X, our 8X, our weaker draws. And we're allowed to do that, again, because the board is good for us, but also those hands aren't quite good enough to put in a ton of money. So, in general, we just get to do a lot of turn probing for different sizes depending on the strength of our hand and the strength of our draws.
Indeed.
Okay. And I just want to see the flop c-bet frequency here.
Indeed.
Checking 32% here.
With a lot of very size that probably do not have.
Pretty indifferent on the size it wants to use here too.
Mm-hmm.
Fair amount of checking with pocket tens here. 70%.
Yeah, it's probably, yeah, that's actually interesting because it's going to board the big blind will still have like lots of continues on even with unpaired hands. So like the main reason you'd want to check these top sets is when like you're blocking so much of their continuing range, but you'd think they would have so much of the continuing range here that you wouldn't have to be this deceptive with your nutted combos.
Well, also at 30 bigs, the highest frequency like hands your opponent's going to be check raising to play for stacks at 30 bigs are going to be 10x oriented, and when we block so much of that, it kind of makes sense why we want to throw in at least a little bit of check, even on a board this wet here. That's why we essentially see pure bet from pocket 8s and pocket 4s, and a little bit of check from 10s. I'm blocking, like, the 10 is very good. That's why we want a pure bet with 8s and 4s. But blocking so much of their highest frequency get-ins here with pocket 10s is why we at least want to mix in a little bit of check.
Yeah.
All right. Want to do one more?
Yeah, one or two more.
Yeah. I'm going for an hour and a half right now, so we can get a couple more in if you want.
Odin hurts my brain sometimes.
This one to be a face-up one.
Not going to be super brain heavy.
Well, I was gonna say there's a chance that button checks back on this flop here too. This isn't gonna be a pure c-bet flop, so definitely could have been some turns, but makes sense.
We'll do this and then wait for one more big blind one and then call it a day.
Speaking of one big blind.
Yeah, he's not going to have a lot of offsuit 3x, even in the button versus big blind scenario, so you can probably just do that. And
I would assume this is going to be a
equity.
Pure c-bet board with our range here.
And big blind's got a lot of flush draws. We don't have much working for us.
Having diamonds here is also really bad because we block his backdoor diamond draws that are going to call here every single time. But apparently our hand's such dog shit that we still want to be betting here quite a bit. Yeah, I would have guessed that. I would have guessed very low frequency double barrel with diamonds here.
So we've done what, like five or six of these now? Yeah, I feel like this is the day where we've had the most of these spots where I'm just staring at the screen for 5 seconds trying to figure it out.
Bottom line is, like, I take a fair amount of pride in thinking I'm finding a fair amount of bluffs here because I have been working with Odin quite a bit, but there's been plenty of spots today where I'm just like, I'm never bluffing with this hand here. So it's kind of sweet to see at least how wide we can be bluffing, but also nice to know that we should definitely be under defending because, you know, as much as we work with Odin here, we know we're working harder than our opponents. And if these spots are, like, pretty difficult for us and kind of unbelievable, then we know our opponents aren't finding them. So that's why, in general, we do a lot of overfolding versus double and triple barrels from our opponents because they're just not finding the bluffs that Odin is.
So the fact that out of position only has 11 combos of flushes would suggest that they're playing their flush draws very aggressively versus the one big blind bet on that side. So that's why that's why in position, that's why the button actually has the flush advantage. And so where are we generating like all these folds though from? We're just going to have lots of
ace high and king high floats.
Yeah. So what's he folding when let's see that. When we bet 1/3 with our 8-6 of diamonds, what are we getting folds from?
We're betting a third on the turn?
That's what it showed, right? I wanted to bet 1/3.
I guess that makes sense on a flush card. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to see, but he's still continuing with all his ace-x. So we're really just targeting these king x and then again, when you bet one big blind, you're getting floats from these sorts of hands too for MDF purposes, as we've discussed. So that's why it's so efficient. It's just because after the flop ranges are still so wide that you can get a very efficient bluff for that 1/3 with just your absolute weakest hands that actually that actually unblock his weakest floats, like his
Mm-hmm.
his jack nines and whatnot. So then that's why it makes sense. All right, that's cool. And it's
Yeah.
that's not intuitive at all.
No, that's why the Range Explorer is such a great tool to have.
Yeah, but once you break it down, because they're like, here, I assume, so when we bet one big, we were hypothesizing.
I assume we're betting range here too, by the way.
Yeah. That's a one big blind.
Whoa. A lot more checking than I expected to see.
Yeah, well, Kansas sort of makes sense.
Well, again, at like deeper stacks, I would expect to see more checking because we're at a bit of a 3x disadvantage here. Like big blind's going to have every single 3x suited, and we're not. And then obviously, like it's worse for us to just pile in money when stacks are deeper as opposed to when they're shorter. So I still would have expected a pretty high frequency c-bet strategy here.
And you can see that his flush draws are, other than the ones with like a decent amount of showdown value, the kings and ace high ones.
Mm-hmm.
Most of his flush draws are playing very aggressively versus the one big blind bet.
Yeah, that's another thing I would not have expected. I'm definitely not playing my flush draws. I mean, maybe against one big blind, we are a bit forced to check raise a little bit more than had we bet, third pot here. The smaller our opponent bets, the more we have to be check raising to counter that small bet. Otherwise, we just allow him to get away with making that small bet way too much and not putting him in a tougher spot.
Even against the third, though, it's just playing these flush draws very, very aggressively, which is...
I would not have guessed that.
Because we still have a 3x advantage, because while we're probably defending... Oh, no, we don't have jack 3. We don't even have queen 3.
But we have every suited 3.
That's true.
And we probably, on the button, we probably open queen 3 suited, king 3 suited, ace 3 suited, and then like ace 3 off, maybe king 3 off. So yeah, I still think they have a pretty big 3x advantage here, so.
And then it's sort of natural to counteract that by using all your flush draws too. All right.
Huh? That's interesting.
I feel like Odin has thoroughly put me through the ringer today. But I hope you guys have learned something.
Yeah. Good thing is we're getting our money's worth here, because I've done far much more learning with Odin in the last 3 months or so than I ever did with Pile solvers. So, and not to knock on Pile, but again, the greatest thing about Odin is it ends up you get to run through sims so quickly, so you're just getting to like bang out hands like crazy. Yeah. And then at the same time, they also show you bet sizes that you might not be incorporating with your simulations and Pile solver. So like that's been the biggest eye opener for me. So Odin's been great, but it's also been super frustrating because I'm just as soon as I feel like really strong about my game, I'm like, holy hell, I still have so much to learn here.
Yeah, I feel like I wasn't quite on top of things, but it's just because there were so many more spots where I was just staring at it, just like trying to work it out. But I hope that was still educational for y'all, even though we were kind of a little more lost in the woods today than maybe we have been in the past.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think how to wrap this up here.
Yeah.
We should definitely do more work with just battling Odin in general, I think. I mean, I usually just like to run spots that I end up saving, and even if they're kind of insignificant, just to kind of see what frequencies might be on certain boards. Again, a great part about Odin is that we can just run them so quickly. But another part of it is also, like you saw how we were kind of digging into the weeds in a couple spots. It's really important not just to see that Odin's doing a certain thing, but also to understand why it's doing what it's doing. So like that 7-5 offsuit hand might not have made a whole lot of sense, like just in terms of us like blocking backdoor flush draws and it just like seeming too weak to continue. But when we look into it, we know that our opponent does like hardly ever turns flushes, so it makes a whole lot more sense why we can kind of reach to like find some unnatural bluffs, because if our opponent never turns flushes, then we can be pretty aggressive and also know that our opponent is not going to be very strong here either. So I think it's really important to that we actually elaborated on that, and in the spots where you're kind of confused as to why Odin's doing what it's doing, I would definitely like take your time, look at the Range Explorer, and try to figure out why it's coming to these conclusions. So that was pretty eye-opening for me too.
Yeah. All right. Well, good stuff. Thanks for coming, everyone. And we'll do it again next week, and maybe sometime next week, Kurt and I will actually get to my H as well, my hand history as well, and yeah.
Throw in the bargs, not just your hand history. What is it?
They know they know.
They don't know. There's some new faces in here. They don't know.
Yes. Good point. Yeah. So I had a big score a few weeks ago, 500 on GG for 6 figures, and I know everyone, or not everyone, but I know a fair amount of you have wanted to see what that was like, and Kurt and I have promised that we will be going through it at some point in the near future. So that near future is upon us, and we will be sure to break it down. I don't want to promise next week, but probably next week. And Kurt and I will talk behind the scenes about when exactly we want to do that, but next week probably makes sense.
Sure. I am going to be on vacation, so I just got to see if my internet connection's okay. It's just I'll probably have to have Steve or you take control of the recording because my internet connection just isn't going to be as good. And until I got my new router set up here, my recording was pretty bad. Like, my own audio was fine, obviously, but the Discord wasn't great because my connection was so low. So I guess that'll be the one thing that we end up working on. Yeah, DMC, my old man's coming tomorrow, so I'm on a 1-week vacation starting tomorrow.
He needs a vacation from his vacation.
Yeah.
His life is a vacation, but he needs a vacation.
Piss off. Been working hard over here, but I am still going to try to make it for the study sessions. I'm going to try to churn out some videos for the Discord as well, so I'll be doing a little bit of work while I'm on my vacation, because just not doing anything for a week just doesn't seem like a possibility, so I'm definitely going to run some sims on my own and hope that we can churn out some content for the Academy as well, so.
All right. Yeah. Well, cheers, everyone.
All right, fellas. Appreciate it. Good session.
Have a good rest of the day. Good weekend. Sayonara.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Have a good one.